Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program discussed here on Global Television. I am Samuel Odi. Many thanks for joining on today's edition of the program. Today, we look at and examine one of the most important issues affecting every Nigerian household, businesses, and industry, which is fuel pricing. From 87 naira per litre before the administration of late President Muhammadu Buhari to over 1,000 naira per litre in many parts of the country today, Nigeria has witnessed dramatic change in the petroleum sector. While government urged that subsidy removal was necessary to save public finances and encourage investment, many citizens continue to struggle under rising transportation, food, and energy costs. With a are truly benefiting from deregulation. Joining us, we explain all of these, but before we get right into the conversation, we will want to go back to memory lane and see how this trajectory, how we got to this point in the Nigerian petroleum sector. We'll be extracting the background, and then the background shows that Nigeria's fuel price and history remains one of the most contentious economic issues affecting citizens, government finances, and national development. Before the administration of His Excellency late President Muhammadu Buhari in 2015, petrol was sold at about 87 naira per litre under a heavily subsidized regime. The subsidy system was designed to keep fuel affordable despite Nigeria being a major crude oil producer. However, successive governments argued that the subsidy became a major drain on public finance and encouraged corruption, smuggling, and efficiencies. We saw that happening, and then we fast forward to the era of, or look at the era of President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan from 2010 to 2015, where PMS was largely remained at 87 naira per litre. To January 2012, where subsidy removal attempt pushed price above 140 naira per litre. Massive nationwide protests forced the government to partly restore subsidy. Pump price eventually settled around 97 naira per litre. The period was characterized by high global crude oil prices, averaging about $100 per barrel, allowing government to sustain subsidy payments. Then forward to 2015-2023, under the administration of the APC and President Muhammadu Buhari, when Muhammadu Buhari assumed office in May of 2015, the price of fuel was still at 87 naira to a litre, down till then in 2016 rather, government announced a new pricing template. Petrol increased to about 145 naira per litre. Authorities described it as price modulation rather than outright subsidy removal. 4 years down the line, the whole world was struck by COVID-19 pandemic, which also crashed the global oil price. Pump price dropped temporarily to between 123 naira to 125 naira per litre. Then, in the midst of all of that, the government now introduced monthly price adjustments linked to international market realities. It's no longer news that crude oil is a global commodity, and whatever happens in the diaspora, in the international market, also reflects to how this commodity is being sold here in Nigeria and in Africa at large. Then forward to 2021-2023, global crude oil recovery and exchange rate pressure pushed price higher. Then prices fluctuated between 165 naira and 195 naira to a litre. Government spent trillions of naira sustaining subsidy payments. By the end of Buhari's tenure, fuel was sold around 185 naira to 195 naira per litre. Subsidy expenditure exceeded over 4 trillion naira annually. The Petroleum Industry Act, PAI, promoted a deregulated downstream market, which is set to help cushion the effect within the petroleum sector. Well, that didn't really yield all of the results that the government wanted at the time, because still services, monies or resources from public finance is still being used to service subsidy at the time. So let's move on to the administration of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu from 2023 till date. On May 29th, 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu declared fuel subsidy is gone. The announcement triggered immediate market adjustment, price evaluation from 2023, which was around 185 naira per liter, which skyrocketed to 540 naira per liter. Late in 2023, another increment we went up to the PMS price went up to around 617 naira to 700 naira per liter, and then in 2024 till date, we've seen the price fluctuate from 800 naira to 1,100 naira per liter, depending on the location and the city where an individual is purchasing this from. So from 2025 to 2026, prices became increasingly tied to exchange rates, global crude prices, refinery costs, transportation expenses. Several locations recorded PMS above 1,000 naira per liter. Industry analysts argue that subsidy removal has significantly reduced government expenditure but transferred cost directly to the consumers. Now, questions are being asked. Isn't the government supposed to, lessen the cushion or the effect of the price of this commodity on the life of citizens? That is what some analysts argue that, and some are saying no, the government needs to make its citizens pay for whatever they consume. But we will get into all of that argument shortly. But now let's look at OPEC projection and global oil market trends from 2015 down to 2016. OPEC faced a major oil price collapse. Brent crude oil fell below $40 per barrel, and then we also saw a global oversupply dominated the market around 2020 due to the effect of COVID-19 because it caused unprecedented demand destruction. Oil briefly traded below $20 to a barrel. OPEC introduced historic production costs, which was around 2022 to 2024, and then came the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which tightened global supply. Brent crude oil also gained momentum and exceeded around $120 per barrel at some point. OPEC maintained cautious production increase from 2025 to 2026, which OPEC projection continued a long-term oil demand growth according to OPEC's latest outlook. Global oil demand is expected to rise from about 105 million barrels daily in 2025 to more than 113 million barrels daily by 2030, which has been OPEC's projection. OPEC does not foresee a global demand peak before 2050. These projections remain important because Nigerians' fuel price are increasingly linked to the international crude price. So now let's come back home now after this foundation has been laid. Now, Dangote refinery factor is also playing a massive role in what's currently going on within the petroleum sector here in Nigeria. The commissioning of the 650,000 barrel per day refinery owned by Aliko Dangote was expected to reduce Nigerians' dependency on imported fuel. However, fuel pricing remains market-driven. Recent pricing adjustments show that in March of 2026, ex-January price ranged between 1,075 naira and 1,200 naira per liter, depending on the market condition. Then we forward that to June 2026. The same ex-January price was reduced to about 1,175 naira per liter after global crude oil price ease. We're not going to forget about the recent crisis that transpired between the US and Iran and also Israel, which also spiked the price of crude based on the fact that the Strait of Hormuz was also shut down because that is part of the Iran territory, and around 20% of the global crude oil that the entire world uses gets to pass through that route before it gets to its final destination. The incident, the crisis that happened between these nations also triggered the effect, and then we saw crude being sold for over 120 to 140 dollars to a barrel. We'll still get into that. So now let's talk about Dangote fuel to Togo versus Nigerian marketers. This has been a very serious conversation, and Nigerian marketers are alleging that Dangote refineries tend to sell its products cheaper to other marketers in Togo, which Nigerian marketers later on go to buy from those in Togo through in Lume, import it back to Nigeria and still sell for Nigerians at an affordable price. But what Dangote refinery is directly selling to Nigerian marketers, it's way higher, and then they tend to lose based on the pricing which is being sold to other marketers in Togo and other international communities. One of the emerging controversies in 2026 is the allegation that some Nigerian marketers obtained Dangote produced fuel through Lume trading hub in Togo. Industry reports indicate that the product refined in Lagos are exported through Lume hub. Some volumes are eventually returned to Nigeria through trading agreements. Analysts suggest that this reflects differences in pricing structures and trading opportunities between export and domestic markets. Now, the key questions that people are asking is Dangote selling cheaper to foreign buyers? Are Nigerian marketers disadvantaged at this point? If that should be the case, is regional export pricing extorting the local market? All of those are like what we'll be looking at. And again, is it time already for the government to intervene in this concern, in this issue? So these are one of the major issues that are increasingly shaping the national debate on energy security. So those are the major questions we'll be looking to unpack today, and how it's affecting Nigeria, and why other refineries we have, why they are not also producing, and Nigeria being the host country for Dangote. If these allegations are being true, why then is he selling more higher to Nigerians than what is being sold to other customers from other African countries? And how comes they would have to go buy from there, bring it back to Nigeria before selling to the common man? So those are the conversations we will be having. And again, the Crude for Naira initiative, how has that been sustained based on how President Bola Ahmed Tinubu introduced that around 2024? We saw it run through 2024 and 2025, and at some point the effects strengthened Nigerian naira, and then we saw the Nigerian naira being stabilized at the time. So now, has that been sustained? That's what we're going to be finding out today. And what is this controversy is going on between Nigerian marketers and Dangote refinery, and also the Lume marketers as well, who have alleged that they get their products cheaper from Dangote refinery. We will be going on a very quick break, and then when we return back, I'm going to be introducing my guests who will help us unpack this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. And while we await our guests to join us virtually from Lagos, let's walk through what the current modalities and the realities of what the removal of fuel subsidy, how it have actually impacted businesses, impacted households, and generally the economy at large, how that is affecting the government of the day, and how it's also affecting the citizens of the country. No doubt the foundation has been laid about how, fuel, PMS has been sold around 87 naira per litre from the era of during the regime of President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, as well as we've been seeing the current realities of what happened and how fuel subsidy got to the point of removal. During the era of President Ebele Jonathan, a move was made to remove the fuel subsidy, but Nigerians rebelled and protested against that, which also led to the fact that PMS were sold at around 97 naira per litre. So looking at all of those concerns now, the effect of fuel subsidy removal by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on the 29th of May 2023 sparked a whole lot of controversies. Cost of transportation went up, cost of food items in the market went up, everything literally, energy, everything literally that has to do with fuel and movements skyrocketed. The cost of food items as well was also inflated by that act of fuel subsidy removal. So from those angles now, generally, it's sparked a whole lot of reactions, and Nigerians are complaining about it. Some analysts argue that yes, despite the fact that fuel subsidy removal was highly needed, because it's going to help the government save public finance, and then it's going to cushion the effects of borrowing to be able to use and finance the subsidy which Nigerian government is paying for. When all of those things were in place, or before they were in place, Nigerian government has been financing that, and it was argued by this current administration that is purely corruption, and individuals are the ones actually making all of this effect, and those monies for those subsidy that the government is using to service those public funds that the government is using to service fuel subsidy is actually going into the pocket of a few Nigerians, which is not helping the economy and the GDP of the economy at the time. That's why the fact that we see that this commodity is a global commodity. We tend to see a series of ways the government looked out for ways to be able to cushion this effect, and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu resorted to the fact that fuel subsidy needs to be gone. Questions are being asked now: was fuel subsidy being gone the problem, or was it the fact that is because the way at which it was removed, that was the problem? Now, people argued that they did not create enough strategies were not in place for fuel subsidy removal to actually take place. That people argued that it was supposed to be done in phases, but it happened overnight, and lots of Nigerians did not prepare themselves for this activity, and then it's affecting businesses, households, and individuals negatively. So on that note now, Dangote refinery came into play, and then Nigerians were promised of the fact that with Dangote refinery coming into play, the effect and the cost of fuel is actually going to reduce, and that Nigerians would be able to have a higher purchasing power, which that has not been the case, in the sense that Nigerian marketers now are complaining about the fact that Dangote refinery sells its product higher than what it sells for international international marketers, and then they have to go buy from those marketers in Togo through the Actors of Lomé before bringing it back to Nigeria to sell for Nigerians. At the end of the day, everybody is going to see this as business, right? Because everybody is in business to make profit. And then Dangote felt like, okay, selling to these people, I probably make more money than when I sell directly to Nigerians. And this product again is it's an international commodity, and the pricing now is something that is very, very important. So, what is the main concern between Dangote refinery and Nigerian marketers? Yes, the NNPC too has its own role to play, which a serious amount of money and the is being missing, and the Senate are still trying to probe and find out where that amount of money ranging to over 200 trillion naira was during the era of the former NNPC boss. So we are looking at all of these activities, and again, the Crude for Naira initiative, how sustainable has it been? How has it helped cushion the effect of the cost in the market? So all of those concerns is what we are looking to, x-ray onto this edition. We'll go on another quick break, and then we'll hopefully come back with our guests to have depth conversation about the subject matter. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us now. Joining us to x-ray this conversation is a senior energy expert and analyst in the person of Dr. Wisdom. And good afternoon. Thank you for joining on today's edition of Discuss, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure.
All right, let's walk us through the evolution of fuel pricing in Nigeria from the subsidy era to the current regulated market. If you could, take us back to memory lane of how we arrived at this point, given the fact that Nigeria is a crude producing country, and the era and the reason why we get to see to the fact that we purchased crude or fuel at the rate at which we produce, given the evaluation of fuel pricing in Nigeria and during the subsidy era.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so basically, um, the era, I mean, we've had times where there was fuel subsidy, where generally fuel was so below the cost of making the fuel. And that what that meant was that the government had to, pay the differential. And now we've come to a time where we've transitioned, occasioned by the Petroleum Industry Act. We have been able to, fortunately, transition to a point where we can now get fuel through our local refineries because we're now operating a free market system, unregulated in any way, shape, and form. And that also has come with its own challenges because we're talking about the challenges of affordability. Those are very serious challenges that we need to put into consideration. We're also talking about the challenge of solving some of the issues along the supply value chain. For example, the logistics challenge that the Dangote took upon himself to try and solve, which, to be very honest, has been the reasons behind the having quite a huge amount of price in the between the differential between the price that Dangote is selling and the price that the distributors eventually bring to us. And we've seen the Dangote with about 4,000 CNG trucks in the time past attempt to solve that particular problem. So now we've come to a time where the fuel is operating in the like I said, the free market system. So it is subject to factors like exchange rate and whatever is going on with the cost of crude in the international community. And so the other thing that I think is affecting the cost of fuel is whether or not the Dangote is charging in naira or there's a back end dollar component to this to this transaction. So there are a number of nuances surrounding that. And we more recently, the war between the US and Iran, of course, Israel being a part of it, has also sent the cost of the crude skyrocketing, and by extension, the cost of the the refined products. And now we also have another problem on our hands because we're hearing that the suppliers are going all the way to the neighboring countries around Nigeria to get fuel that has been exported at a more affordable rate to other African countries and reroute those fuel back into Nigeria. So there are a number of things we've solved, but there are still things that we have not been able to solve in totality yet. And I think that should be where the industry should be looking at from a reform standpoint.
Angles which you highlighted of wisdom, a concern which Dangote took upon himself, and every other issues which you also highlight.
Borrowing to actually pay, right? We're literally borrowing to pay for, the things we're paying for. And what that means for us is that at this particular point in time, we wouldn't have been able to sustain it. And that's why when people say, oh, where's the millions that were trillions that have been saved? The answer is very much inherent in the fact that it was debt that was used to pay for this. So the only net effect is that you have less of a deficit compared to when we're running the subsidy, issue. So I think, in a nutshell, we couldn't have been able to afford it. And much more, there are some very intrinsic issues beyond the transactional framework of things. If we had continued, right, if we had continued what we're doing at the moment, we would not have been able to have a chance to create a domestic industry like the Dangote, which would have served the Nigerian community. And I use my words carefully because you could say, oh, well, the Dangote could have set up, it's in a free trade zone and focused for export. But that would simply mean that we ourselves are not benefiting from translating the potentials that we've got at the moment down to financials, or down to economic gains, or down to the GDP component of the economy. So I think it's been a very long road, I like to say, and but we didn't have much of an option. And also, that is really evident when you think about the fact that in the Nigerian budget for 2023, I think after the handover, mid-year budget, there was no money occasioned for any subsidy of any nature. So it is the fact that the structural framework upon which the subsidy was laid had been pulled out by the previous administration. The President Bola Ahmed Tinubu only came in with, empowered by the Petroleum Industry Act, to put the legislative framework and to declare it, leveraging on that legislative framework. But the actual structural framework, which is the funds for the subsidy, was previously not provisioned for by the Buhari administration in the 2023 budget beyond the mid-year when he handed over.
All right. So, now, let's come back to Dangote. Now, you highlighted the fact that this product needed to be rerouted after being purchased by neighboring African countries. So, what would you say is a major challenge between Nigerian marketers and the Dangote refinery, why they've not been why they've not been able to successfully, transact business together? Can you maybe enlighten us on what you think might be the major concern why the Nigerian marketers don't buy directly from Dangote refineries, despite the fact that it's here? Because from a layman's understanding, he will say, what's the need? The Dangote refinery is just in Lagos, so you just get it from Lagos and then transport it to every other part of the country where the consumers are. But what is the major concern? What do you think is the problem why they haven't been able to transact freely?
No, I'm not going to say they don't transact freely. I think they have opposing objectives, and that's really the truth. There are opposing objectives. The Dangote is looking to assert itself as a dominant player, maximize its earnings, and then scale its refinery. And that's pretty much understandable. The marketers, on the other hand, are more pro people because they want a higher spread. Basically, they just want to have more spread, more money in their coffers, right? And excitingly, if they can afford to, spend, get the cheaper, value in terms of the cheaper fuel, then they can obviously have more of a spread because the cost of sale will almost certainly be, decided by the cost of the Dangote refinery. So if they can get something cheaper, they want that because it means that they have a bigger spread. It also means that when the rainy day comes, the time when typically you might expect, issues like, the price has fallen and they still have some stock, meaning they have to sell at a loss, then they can pretty much accommodate that loss without blinking. I think that's what they are. So what that means is that every time they have to go searching to see what is the cheaper alternative, imports cheaper than the domestic production, and then you see them make a case. And the other thing is that sometimes the vulnerability that you would impose on your economy to depend on the Dangote refinery in a sole term is something that I'm not sure the government would want to take that route. And so you see the government feel, okay, why don't we, just make sure that there are the import license options. And if there are the import license options, people are going to take it as a backup plan. That's just the truth. They are coming to the negotiating table, not, cap in hand, or what they call it, cap in hand begging. They're coming to the negotiating table with a backup plan that if it doesn't go this way, we'll go the other way. And that's the way they've been able to get negotiations. So for me, as I'm sitting now and talking as a person that is actually a customer, right? And I personally feel that in itself is the beauty of having a free market system where there is an interaction of market forces, which ultimately allows the market to decide, and then that ultimately drives the price point down, the price point between, what the producer is selling and what people are willing to buy. And I think it maybe gives us a much fairer chance to get very closer to a, much closer to a fair price point from a consumer standpoint.
We saw lots of excitement when Dangote Refinery came to be, and it's a free market. Obviously, like I rightly mentioned earlier before you joined us, that at the end of the day is business. But looking at the fact that Nigerian marketers are looking to get a cheaper product now, do you think they consider quality when all of this is being done, or because a couple of times we've seen Nigerians who customers, consumers just like yourself, who have argued that the recent petrol that they've been buying is a bit lighter than what they used to buy, in the sense that it finishes on time. Do you think the fact that Nigerian marketers tend to look for cheaper commodities to buy. Of course, when you buy something cheaper than the normal standard, there should be a bit of a fluctuation in quality. So, do you think that is what Dangote is refusing to compromise on? That's why these marketers are going away from Dangote to purchase from still Dangote, but from a third party at this point.
Well, I mean, I think, to be honest, the issue as to whether that is what is affecting their choice is really debatable. But I think what you're trying to say is that there is a more complete combustion when we burn the Dangote fuel. Of course, if it burns, it is more lighter. It's got, all the is burning at the right rate. And what that means is that it's much cleaner to the environment. So I think, that ticks all the boxes. Like for me, from an environmental standpoint, that shouldn't be a worry. And even if it's a worry, right, there are few additives that consumers can add to improve the quality of their fuel. So it shouldn't be, I think, a showstopper. I don't see that being a showstopper in any form, shape, or manner. Rather, I think that the overarching issue here, looking at it from the supplier standpoint, is simply the fact that they prefer to have a better spread. And that better spread comes when you're comparing the refinery in one country to the other, and then you can bring everything to the book and say, okay, this is the one that gives me best value for my money. And I think that works perfectly.
We've seen all of this, and obviously it's a free market, and Nigerians, marketers, everybody would definitely would do or will purchase the product for his or her own profit, because everybody's in business for profit. But let's look at a bigger picture now. What can be done, or how can local refineries translate into significantly cheaper fuel? Looking at the Nigerian current economic structure and we are all aware of the issues on the ground, and also what can be done now for Nigerians to at least get to purchase fuel at a lesser price of 1,000 plus, depending on where individuals are buying. So, what do you think the government, what significant role can the government play to help cushion this effect away from subsidy? Because subsidy did not provide an adequate answer.
Well, I think, again, the interaction of market forces is really important when it comes to moderating the price point of PMS. And number one, if we have a stable currency regime like we have now, that's a good positive. It means there's some predictability. And it means the factor of pricing that takes into cognizance the unpredictability of the exchange rates is something that is clearly, something that is not going to materialize. Now, the second thing, right, for me, from where I sit, is we need to understand that there are factors outside our control, but then there are factors within our control. Now, let's talk about a very important factor that I'd love to enunciate. Let's talk about a factor like the crude for naira supply deal. I think perfectly that crude for naira supply deal is something that we, need to go back and really actualize. And if we actualize this in the framework of the contract that it was meant to be, then I think we're good to go. I don't see a problem with that. If the crude for crude for naira supply deal brings the benefits, and we can, we can get those benefits across in terms of the crude volumes, then we can cut out importations and all of that, and that's a really good benefit for the Nigerian people. Now, the other thing is, let's ask ourselves why are we having a situation where the Dangote, for example, is selling cheaper to people outside the country? When Nigerians are not getting it that cheap. For example, it's known that people are rerouting fuel from Lome and the rest of the areas down into to sell. And they're selling in Nigeria and making profits. And Dangote would say to you that it is the levies that the government has put on their, fuel that has caused all of these. So what is that telling you? That if we can have a system where the government reviews some of those levies, then the final fuel product that goes to us is going to be lesser. Thankfully, the Dangote has solved the delivery value chain challenge that was causing another additional cost. So I think in a nutshell that we have done a lot, from taxation and surcharge and all of that, to help us to get cheaper fuel. I certainly think that the issue of even, I think, adding, fuel tax, as they call it, which the consider because of the inflationary effect. So I think in a nutshell, for me, I personally feel that the government can do a lot more from a regulatory standpoint sector, and with taxes and compliance dues, but also to meet their terms of supply for the domestic food.
Which also helped the Nigerian economy, the price stabilized at some point. So, looking at it from those angles now, how sustainable do you think the crude for naira initiative could be? Because we saw it around 2024 when the president introduced this, and it helped a bit. And again, the Naira stability also contributed positively to this. So how can this now be sustained so as we, despite the fact that yes, crude is an international commodity, there will definitely be that rise and fall. But how can it be sustained in terms of the crude for Naira initiative within the Nigerian petroleum sector?
Well, so I think the sustainability has to do with supply. It is not a hidden case that we have issues sometimes with supply, although recently we've exceeded our OPEC quota. So the more we can have, remember we have crude back loans. We also have part of our crude that is going to the partners that are exploring and producing crude in Nigeria. So the important thing is that if we can have more baseline supply, that would really help the crude for Naira deal. It's not about pricing point. Yes, there are conversations around the fact that the Dangote, for example, still buys in Naira, but that is benchmarked against the dollar value. Those can be sorted out, but we just need supply yet, and that's critical. My long-term plan, so that I can just put this out on your show, is I think the government needs to think about giving some sort of special purpose concessions to the refiners when they are giving out the bid rounds for the fields. So think about it. We've got a lot of fields, call some refiners and tell them, look, we're giving you specially the right of first refusal. Are you willing to take up this field so that we are basically producing what you are going to refine? And because they've made commitment, a lot of them don't have the buy power or even the architecture setup like the Dangote. So they cannot begin to import, because if they import, where is the ship going to dock, and then where are they going to offload? They don't have those tank setups for storage like Dangote can import for 6 months. So for them, because they're already in the downstream and they badly need crude, this is a very speedy way to get massive investment into the upstream. At the same time, also make sure that we get to a self-sustainable point where we're definitely refining what we're producing. So I think without much ado on this, I think that's the way to go. Let's give them a preferential, kind of option. Pick whatever field you want, develop it, and then run with it.
And I want to say a very big thank you to you, Dr. Wisdom, for taking our time to join us on today's edition of Discuss, and thank you for all of your input. I'm sure the appropriate bodies are taking note of these factors that you're highlighting and the points you made.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
As Nigeria continues its transition from subsidy to fuel deregulation, the debate is no longer just about fuel price, it's about how economy, competitiveness, energy security, social welfare, and the future of Africa's largest oil producing nation. The challenge for policymakers remains how to balance market realities with the welfare of millions of Nigerians whose livelihood are directly tied to the cost of energy. Thank you so very much for taking our time to join us on today's edition of Discuss. I am Samuel Odi. I'll see you again as we discuss further. Bye for now.